Well, let's get started on this. Let's go right here first. Dun, dun, dun. All right. I'm going to go up here, Genesis 1 and verse 1. Now, where a lot of misconception has come throughout teaching of what's actually happened in Genesis 1 is what I'm going to try to close the gap on today. Today is Wednesday, November the 19th, 2025, the Sabbath. Yeah, I know that some of y'all's going to say, no, it ain't. That's fine. Cool. Tomorrow is a new moon day. We won't do any work there, and it won't be recognized as a day of the month. And then Friday, the 9th month will start. We'll see the sliver of the moon tomorrow night. So, back to what we're talking about. So, last week, if you haven't had the opportunity to go back, done a video called Yahuwah is Yahusha, and some of the things that I spoke about there, I'm going to show you again here, and then there's going to be some things that I talked about then that you're going to say, well, no, I don't, that's not what I see, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to give a little bit more clarification to some of those things, a little bit more in depth to some of the things that we've been misled to believe. So, translation is where it all comes to. We're going to start right here in Genesis 1:1. You see right here, when in the beginning Elohim created the heavens and the earth. Now, if you spoke this in Hebrew, it would be Bereshit Elohim Shamayim Aletz. And so created all that is added when we go to the English. And so the deception begins. Now, why it is that translations don't, well, that Hallelujah Scriptures does, but you still have to go into what this means, simply because you come right down here and you read two things. You read the face of the deep, which implies water, and then you read the face of the waters, which definitely tells you waters, yet nowhere it tells you anything about any waters. The reason it don't is because this word heavens is shamayim, which is sham there, and ma'im, water, the waters. And there's actually 7 of them. That's why when you read about Ezekiel going to the 7th heaven, you think they're stacked on top of each other, but they're actually not. They're actually all across, simply because he divided the waters from the waters. And the 7 seas above, he called shamayim, heavens, and the 7 seas below, he called seas. So where he left in the darkness. But we need to get into why the earth came to be or became formless and empty. Because it implies that something happened and then something started over, which it did. But a lot of those that read into it say, no, that's not what happened. He's just, letting you know that when he created the heavens and the earth, it was formless and empty before he done all of these things. And I'm going to show you that's almost impossible after what I'm fixing to show you here. So let's get into what this in the beginning is first. Okay, so because that's what I got into the other day. So let me get back into this. Let me all right. Here's what we see right here. In the beginning. which also means Genesis. Now, I spoke about this last week because I showed y'all what this Bereshit is. Remember that in Hebrew, a word also tells a story. It has its own symbols and its own meanings of each one. So this Bereshit, or in the beginning, this is where the deception comes in, is the covering of the head of man. We know that to be the sun. I showed that last week. If you get an opportunity, go watch it. I'm not going to go back into depth of it about why it is, and he tells us it's him. Is a strong leader. We know, again, that's the son, who will be destroyed by his own hand. Again, we showed that last week at the cross sticks. So we showed last week that this is the son. That's what we showed. And this is the Ruach, the Father, the invisible Elohim, the spirit that hovered above the waters. We'll get into him in a minute. Where'd that spirit come from? He ain't spoke of before. It's the spirit and then the form. That form, Bereshit, the son, the covering of the head of man, this is Emmanuel. Emmanuel. You say, no, it's not. I say, well, what does Emmanuel mean? It translates to Elohim with us. Now, none of you are going to argue that the angels were in this time. None of you. You know they were. Would that not be Elohim with them? You say, well, no, that ain't the same. Okay. I get that. You think it ain't the same, but I'm going to show you here in a minute that Elohim with us did not just apply when the Messiah came, because nobody really calls him Emmanuel, because they don't see that who that son is from Genesis 1:1, that all things were created by and through. This is the son, Emmanuel, Elohim, the only El formed. This is the son. Okay. So, what did he do first? And you say, well, he created the heavens and the earth. And I say, yes, that's what it says. Absolutely does. Let's go back here again and look at it for a minute. And let's just see this. So now we know this is the son. So, Emmanuel, Elohim, created the heavens and the earth. Now, in our mind, we say, okay, he created the heavens and he created the earth. It doesn't tell us he created anything else. I agree. But let's go look at Job 38. We'll go down here to verse 4. Now, this is Yahuwah speaking, which we established in the last one is the Son. Go back and look at it. I don't want to get into that argument now. Just know that is who this is. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if you have understanding. Because remember, all things were created by and through the Son. So this is Yahuwah speaking, who created all things as Emmanuel. Declare if you have understanding. Who set its measurements, if you know, or who stretched the line upon it? Upon what were its foundations sunk, or who laid its cornerstone? Now, who's our cornerstone? The Son. But who laid its cornerstone? Now, look, there's a comma. So it didn't stop. Verse 7, when the morning stars sang, we can probably know that those are the angels. They're probably more than likely Divael and Michael and that bunch, the archangels. But I'm not trying to say that's what it is, but we're going to see a distinguishing here. The morning stars sang together, and all the sons of Elohim shouted for joy. Now, let's look at this sons of Elohim for a minute. Now, when we read in Genesis 6, it says the sons of Elohim came into the daughters of men and bore Nephilim. Now, there are those that teach that the sons of Elohim were the good sons of Seth, marrying the bad daughters of Cain. So I ask you this question. If that is the case, and these are not the angels right here, then are you willing to admit that man and woman, if that's the case, it's not? Because the morning stars sang, and all the sons of Elohim shouted for joy. So if this is the case, if it is, then this breeding that you claim took thousands and thousands and thousands of years before it ever came to light in Genesis 6. By the way, why would there be just a sudden burst of these sons of Seth that you claim? Why would there be a sudden burst of them onto the scene, marrying the sudden burst of these daughters? And it doesn't say that it says they took them. It doesn't say that they married them. It says it literally they took them, which would imply that they took them against their will. So if that's the case, then really was those the good sons of Seth, if they were actually taken? Just something for y'all to think about, but we're going to discuss it as it is, and that's the sons of Elohim. Because you see, these morning stars are not in capital letters, and you know those are angels. So these sons of Elohim do not need to be in capital letters either. The Elohim should be. He's the capital letter. They shouted for joy. Okay, the sons of Elohim shouted for joy. So now we've established that there was more than just the water, the heaven, and the earth. Before the earth ever came, this says that the foundations were sunk, its measurement was made, and when the morning stars sang. So when he done all this, they were there. That's what this is telling you. So now we've established that there was something else in Genesis 1:1 besides the water and the earth. So what else was there? Well, we know that John 1:1 tells us that in the beginning was the Word. The Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim. Huh? Really? And then the Word became flesh. Well, wait a minute, hold up. So you're telling me right here, this is the Word that we see walking, the one that came in the flesh. That's what John 1:1 says. What is the Word? The Word would be the omnipresent Ruach, taking the form, Emmanuel, no other El formed, Elohim, that created the waters. We just established the angels and the arets. That is what was done here. The Son created Elohim in the beginning. So now, what else? When he talked that word, who was he teaching it to? The angels. That's who he was teaching it to. What would the word be? His life, his walk, that when given to Moshe became Torah. It was always the word. Adam learned the word walking in the cool of the day with Yahuwah, the Son, Elohim, that all things were created by and through. So now we know the Word, the Son, is also established as a second witness to being right here. What else? Well, we know the waters were. We know the earth was. Let's go look at Matthew 19:4. See what old Matthew says. You want to? Click on that. There it is. And he, Yahusha, the Son, that we've established was, in the beginning, answering said to them, did you not read that he who made them at the beginning made them male and female at the beginning? And you say, well, that's talking about Genesis 1:26 and Genesis 2:7. Hold up. If it's at the beginning, it has to be in the beginning. There ain't no other way to be at the beginning. In the beginning. And you say, no, I'm not going to buy that. And I say, that's perfectly fine. Let's go look at a few more scriptures, because I'm here to tell you, male and female was created in the beginning. And they walked on the earth, in the water, with the angels and the Son, the form that the Abba takes, teaching the word. But let's go see if there's any truth to this. Let's go see if I'm just making all this stuff up. Let's go look at 1 John 3:8. Let's go look at this and see. Verse 3, verse 8. Let's look down here and see. The one doing sin is of the devil, because the devil has sinned from the beginning. Now let's stop right there. If he sinned, transgressed the Torah from the beginning, then he had to have done it in the beginning. For this purpose, the Son of Elohim was manifested to destroy the works of the devil. Notice that says the capital S of Elohim was manifested, and y'all say, yeah, he was born as a man. Well, I'm going to show you here in a minute that what he's speaking about right there is the light of the world. Those who follow his example shall walk in the light and no longer be in the darkness. What the 2/3 done and the 1/3 got left in the darkness to destroy the works of devil. What would those works have been? Because if he sinned and the only thing that there was man and woman, the angels, and there was no man and woman, what could he have done? And you say, oh, well, he turned against the Father, but how so? You say, well, he got the 1/3 angels to turn against him. Well, but what would he be doing that these 1/3 would turn against the Father? If they're all just living the word, they're just going along with each other and decided that they wanted to just rebel against the other angels, the ones that cannot die just like them. What is that about? What would that purpose be? Well, let's go look at something else that 1 John says. We're going to go on down to verse 11. Watch this. Because this is the message that you heard from the beginning. Now let's stop right there. If the message is heard from the beginning, that has to be the word, right? The Elohim, the Abba, the Ruach that took the form, the only El formed, the Son, the message, the word that you heard from the beginning. What would that have been? Oh, that we should love one another. Really? So you mean to tell me a direct Torah command that that the Christians just jump up and down and say, this is all we have to do? That literally from the beginning they heard to love one another? Why would they have heard to love one another? It was the message, the word that came from Elohim. But why would it need to be told? You mean to tell me that the angels were just not loving each other? Is that it? Or is there really man and women that are in the water, on the earth, with the angels, and the Father in his form, the Son, the Elohim, Emmanuel, Or is that really what's going on? Because it makes no sense that he hates us so much if we're really seeing creation not start until the light, the firmament, the land, the sun, moon, and stars, the fish. Isn't that interesting that they're the first animals created? Oh, that would make sense since they're living in the water on the earth. You think the fish wasn't in there then? I can't find it in here. I cannot find it in here. But it almost would make sense that the aquatic life would be there. But I'm not going to say that it was. I'm going to show you what is there. And so Devel hates us with a passion for some reason. What would that reason be? What would cause him to sin? What could lead to the earth to become formless and void? Now, wait a minute. None of the angels died. So if it's void, that means something was there. What would be gone? Would that not be the animals of the water? All right, well, let's say they wasn't there. What else could be gone since the angels can't die? Let's go read John 8:44 and see if we can find out what it was. See, this is interesting. John 8:44. This is Yahusha speaking. You are of your father, the Devel, and the desires of your father you wish to do. He was a murderer from the beginning. Let's stop right there. Now I realize y'all teach that that's Cain, but if you'll go back there to that first John, it speaks about Cain. So that ain't the Devel. He's speaking about the adversary right here. And the only thing he could be murdering in Genesis 1:1 in the beginning, because it to be from the beginning has to be in the beginning, is man and woman, or the plants and animals, or all of it above, because they can't die. And scripture describes them in all different forms and sizes. And when they bred with women, they had these massive giants. Who knows what that war looked like? And you say the war? Say, yeah, the war of the angels. The war of the angels that was fought. That's the one that you got to think about. Revelation 12:7 and 9. We'll get to that in just a minute. So the only way to be a murderer from the beginning is if he was killing man and woman, which would explain why he despises us so much. But let's go on. And has not stood in truth, hasn't stood in the Torah, because there is no Torah truth in him. When he speaks the lie, he speaks of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. Now you know why John says those who say they know Elohim and do not keep his commands is a liar, and the truth is not in them. They are being led by the father of lies. That spirit is leading their life, not the Ruach. That's not who's leading their life. And so when you put all these in, everything that we see, a murderer from the beginning, man and woman from the beginning, to love one another, why would they need to be told to love each other? Well, would it not be understood that it's kind of like the reason everybody in Texas waves at each other because everybody carries a gun? And so it's just better to be friendly with the ones that can fight you back? I mean, seriously. Something else had to cause that. Were we weak then? Probably. Maybe that's what made him mad. Or is it just that we were created lesser than him, which means we could die? And so for him to have to help us, for him to have to work with us instead of making us work for him, instead of making us serve him, he was asked to serve us. And he said, absolutely not. So what happened? Let's go look at Revelation 12. Revelation 12. We're going to go down here to verse 7. And there came to be fighting in heaven. Michael and his messengers fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his messengers fought, but they were not strong enough, nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. And the great dragon was thrown out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who leads all the world astray. He was thrown to the earth, and his messengers were thrown out with him. And you say, no, that hasn't happened yet. Which one of y'all is fixing to tell me that that the 1/3 demons are getting to go to heaven? Which one of you is going to tell me that? Not today. I'm going to show you why this applies here in just a minute. They were found no longer. You know how they were thrown to the earth? I'll give you that one real simple. Because of the firmament and then the air. Why do you think they shooting rockets at the firmament? Huh? They're trying to get him to come back. Why do you think they're killing all the kids? They're trying to get him to come back. They want to try and get in the waters again. That's why when he peels back the firmament like a scroll, the waters will be one again, but the war that's fought this time will be the one that they lose forever. For they will be tossed into the lake of fire, and that is their eternal tomb, or in this case, jail. They can't die. So the eternal torture that they will feel is that they'll be eternally separated from him, no longer having the intermediary known as the Son, Yahuwah. That is why it says the sons of Elohim came to present themselves before Yahuwah, and Satan was there. The 1/3. You know, the dragon and his angels, right? The intermediary, the Son, the light of the world. We'll show that here in just a minute. Why he said, let there be light. But after this war was fought, because Devil wanted nothing to do with serving us, and so they commenced to murdering us and everything else in creation. Everything. This is why we read, and the earth came to be, or the earth became. It had nothing to do with he hadn't done creation yet. Nothing. He tells us he laid out the line and the measurements in Genesis 1. And the angel shouted. So it had a form. Had a form. And obviously it had occupants. We've showed that. And darkness, when you look this word up, you realize that this is speaking of evil. It's on the face of the deep, where it's formless and empty. And the spirit of Elohim, well, if there is a spirit, the Abba, the Father, the Ruach, there is a form. The only El formed. Yahuwah, the Son. And this is where it gets interesting. Was moving on the face of the waters. See, we verified the waters is the heaven. Why was he up above the waters? I'm going to say that Steve Berkson's got this one right. The Father, the Spirit, the Ruach, cannot dwell where evil or darkness resides. That's why it was so important when the Son put his essence and mixed it with man and then walked it perfectly. The darkness no more had any power over that. He overcame that darkness and brought the light into the world. A place for the Ruach, the Spirit, to dwell. He gave it up of his own, and 3 days later took it back. The Spirit of Elohim, the life, the one that will dwell with us forever. That is how we get him now. Because of this war of the angels, that is how the angels get it. Verse 3, watch this. And Elohim said, let light come to be, and light came to be. And you say, oh yeah, look, he spoke it into existence. All things were created by and through the Son. How did the Son create light? How did he create light? Those who follow me shall walk in the light and no longer be in the darkness. How did he create it? The example, the word. And you say, that you said that in that other video, and I didn't catch that then, and I'm not buying that that's Yahuwah. Okay, that's fine. Let's go look at something else real quick. Well, all right. Well, here we go. So, notice right here, like Genesis 1:3. Now remember, we're reading from right to left. Aleph, Val, Resh. Well, an Aleph is a strong, powerful leader. The Val, or Wa, is added or secured, and the Resh is the head of man. So, Genesis 1:3. The strong, powerful leader shall be added and secured as the head of man. Who is the head of man? That is the Son, the strong, powerful leader. Who is the King of Kings? Who is the strong, powerful leader? The Son, the example to follow, the Word that was in the beginning that became flesh, the one that when written down on the stone became the Torah until he became the example. But let's go over here and look at Genesis 1:4. Because remember, it says, and Elohim said, let light come to be, and light came to be, and Elohim saw that the light was good. So everything else stays the same except this hey, which means to reveal. And so he goes on to say, I reveal the strong, powerful leader. What is he revealing? His way. What are we to follow? His way. Whose way is it? The will of the Abba that works through him, that all those that follow it shall walk in the light and no longer be in the darkness. He revealed the strong, powerful leader, the 2/3 angels that he spent 1,000 years separating from the 1/3. Y'all think it was done in a 24-hour period. He doesn't see things that way. Peter tells us this. For a day in the life is but what 1,000 years to us. What is the life? The light, the Abba, the one that will dwell with us forever. Let's go back. Go back here to Genesis 1:1 again. So you can see an Elohim saw the light, that it was good. And Elohim separated the light from the darkness. This was what he done for the 1,000 years. And Elohim called the light day. And y'all say, no, look. That's where he made day. When he got done separating, it was 1,000 years a day. And the darkness he called night. What goes on at night? Is that not when the evil comes out? Everybody knows this. He separated the two. He separated the light that is good from the darkness that is evil. That's the only other thing it can be. He says, I only give you two things, barak or curses, good or dark. There's nothing else. And there came to be morning one day, a day. What do you say this is? A day. What is one day? 1,000 years. It wasn't a 24-hour period. And Elohim said, who did he say it to? He just spoke it? No. The Abba, the Ruach, through the Son. Said, let an expanse come to be in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. Here we are with that waters. Why doesn't that say the heavens from the waters or the seas? Like, well, he goes on later to tell us. And Elohim made the expanse. Now, the reason he made this expanse and separated the waters which were under the expanse from the waters which were above the expanse, this is to give the Father, the Ruach, a place to dwell now. One that is separate from the darkness. One where those that are following his example of how to walk in the light are the ones that dwell in the heaven with him. Separate from the darkness, the 1/3 that do not wish to follow his example. And it came to be so because he built that separation, the 7 seas that he parted in the middle, right dead center. And Elohim called the expanse heavens. Now, why did he call it heavens, plural? Because he had the expanse of heaven, what separates, and the heaven above, plural. And there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, the second day, the second 1,000 years. And Elohim said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear, and it came to be so. This is where him thrown to the earth came to be. And Elohim called the dry land earth. And the collection of the waters he called seas, the 7 seas. And Elohim saw that it was good. When he blew his air, his breath, into or under the firmament, the expanse, his breath is what caused the air pressure that caused the waters to form a collection that he called seas. And Elohim said, let the earth bring forth grass, the plant that yields seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself on the earth. And it came to be so. Why did it come to be so? And the earth brought forth grass, the plant that yields seed across its kind, and the tree that yields fruit, whose seed is in itself according to its kind, and Elohim saw that it was good. Now we're going to stop there for a minute. What exactly do trees, herbs, and grasses produce? The answer to that is air. And what does the air do? It helps maintain the pressure. Now, there's a couple of verses that you can go look at. One, when the earth was flooded, it says that the wind began to blow out of the east. And then all of a sudden, 7 or 14 days later, the dry land appeared again. And the second witness to that would be when the children left Israel and they came to the Red Sea and the soldiers were pressing on them. It says that at dark, the wind began to blow from the east, and at light, the walls of water were there and the dry land was there for them to walk on. So it's his air pressure under the dome that keeps them from being able to go up to the dome to try to get into heaven. That's why they're constantly shooting their rockets at it. They're constantly trying to break into it. That's why Hillary says, we cracked that glass ceiling in the sky. She's telling you, whether y'all believe it or not. So it was that air pressure, those 7 seas that were left down here with the darkness with him, that complete separation before the sun. Remember, it was from the beginning told in Bereshit that the coming of the head of man to die at the cross sticks, to take back that complete authority that was going to be taken away, because he is the beginning and the end, the first and the last. He never changes. If you say he is the beginning and the end, the first and the last, and then you say that he changes, then John says you're a liar. He's never changing. Verse 13, and there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, the third day, the 3,000 years. And Elohim said, let lights come to be in the expanse of heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and appointed times, and for days and years. Now that appointed times is interesting. I'm telling you that today, November the 19th, 2025, on Wednesday, is the Sabbath, the fourth one, his. But I only get that from the lights that came to be in the expanse of the heavens, the sun, moon, and stars. I can't get that anywhere in the Gregorian calendar, not one. And the only way I can know what day is to come is if I can see what part that moon is the night before. And I keep them. He says for signs, not because I can do it perfectly, because I'm pretty sure I'm not, nor am I going to try to stand up and defend that I am. What I am doing is trying to be as Kadesh, unique or different, as he asks. And to follow this, knowing that tomorrow is a dark moon and that the sliver will be tomorrow night, because that's just what, and I'll look for it as long as they ain't got all the clouds they sprayed. But that's what the children done. When the last Sabbath came, the fourth, they waited until they saw the sliver. They did no work. They could cook, but they did no work. That's just what they did. They had feasts. That's why they could cook. They'd had a feast, and they waited for the month to begin. When they saw the sliver that night, the next day they would go back to work, day one, and they would go back over again, following the moon to halfway, day 7, full, day 14. I mean, it just the 7th day, the 14th. See where I'm going with this? It just always does, long as he's following that. People say, no, it skips, and it does. If you're just waiting for the sliver. Now, we would probably have more clear skies if it wasn't in the times that we're in. It would be easier for us to keep up with it, but that's part of the deception that the adversary is putting in which we have to depend on writing this out and doing it accordingly on some time frame instead of being able to just watch for it. I mean, how you think he became the master if all you got to do is show up every Saturnalia day? He didn't become the master by doing that. There had to be something else when you're following this and you're keeping up when the days is to take off and when to have the different feasts. Again, it's not that I'm doing it perfectly, or any of us are, but we have the want to heart to try to be more Kadesh, more unique, more closer to what we can see in the sky than what man is actually telling us. And let them be, verse 15, for the lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth, and it came to be so. And Elohim made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. And Elohim set them in the expanse of the heavens. So there ain't no 93 million miles, or no 238,000 to the moon, to give light on the earth. Now, where a lot of this deception comes in is that light that I showed you, they use, there's not a lot of descriptions that you can use for light when they're using the word in the form that it is. And so this expanse light in the heavens is not the same light that was in Genesis 1:1. In Genesis 1:3. We've established that. This is when timekeeping, if you will, per se, even though he was doing days, but this is when it started. You know, we work 6 days and rest on the seventh. And what does he say? The Sabbath is made for man, not the man for Sabbath. I agree 100% because this is day 4. So you take 4, 5, 6, and 7, that's 4 days. You say, well, if you follow 28 days of 13 months, that's not but 360. And I say, yeah, but if you add these 4 days into it, where somewhere in the year, in the spring of the year, there is a day when there is no shadow for the sun, the day 1 that it started. Because it goes on a cycle. There are people out there that can show you what that cycle is, but I mean, it goes on a cycle. So does the moon. And that's what they do. That's what he set them in the expanse to do, so that we could see what he's talking about, not something that we can foretell. Because as the moon goes, it's harder. There's days in there that it may be 1 day longer before we see it, as opposed to man trying to foretell it. And I realize it can be close, but the reason that it's off and people start questioning about all the different calendars is that everybody thinks they want to be exact, and then they all want to point a bunch of fingers. How about just trying to get close and then asking him and see if he won't narrow it up for you? Be still and know that he is Elohim. Verse 19, and there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, the 4th day, the 4,000 years. Verse 20, and Elohim, the Son, who's doing the will of the Abba that is working through him, let the waters teem with shoals of living beings. Why did he do the waters first? Well, they were in the water in the beginning. So after he put the trees, herbs, and grasses on the land to help maintain the air pressure, that's why they're constantly wanting us to clear more ground and farm more ground to try to destabilize that, along with the BS they do. And let birds fly above the earth on the face of the expanse of the heavens. You know, when they were in the water, I'm sure there were animals that were, quote unquote, looking like they were flying. So it's pretty cool that he done that. Verse 21, and Elohim, the Son, doing the will of the Abba, working through him, that all things are created by and through, created great sea creatures and every living, that should be creature. Because when you go read in 2:7, Adam became a living being. So Adam can't be a living being and the animals be living beings. They have to be living creatures. Because if Adam's a being and that would make Adam equal to the animals, and that's not so, because he named them all. That moves, with which the waters teemed accordingly to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind, and Elohim saw that it was good. And Elohim baraked them, saying, be fruitful and increase, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth. Now, verse 23, and there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, the 5,000th day. Now, let's get over here to verse 24. Now, we're fixing to get into some interesting things, because remember, I told you that up there in Genesis 1:1, that man and woman lived in the earth, in the water on the earth. And so it's interesting that we're fixing to read something here that's kind of going to point back to a few things. Verse 24, and Elohim said, let the earth bring forth the living being, that should be creature, according to its kind, livestock and creeping creatures, the beast of the earth, according to its kind, and it came to be so. And Elohim made the beast of the earth according to its kind, livestock according to its kind, and all that creep on the earth according to its kind, and Elohim saw that it was good. Now, he spent a whole day filling the waters. He didn't spend but half a day filling the earth. Isn't that interesting? Oh, he filled the waters and the air of the earth in that one day. So he takes this half a day to just fill the earth. But now watch this. And Elohim said, the Father, working through the Son, that all things are created by, let us, so now the us makes sense, right? Let us, the Father working through the Son, make man in our image. What is their image? A man. a man. So the Ruach takes a form, the Elohim, Emmanuel, who is now Yahuwah, the light of the world, said, let us, right, the Ruach working through the form, make man the image that they are, our image, our plural, the Father working through the Son, according to our likeness. Now, why is it our image and our likeness? Why is there a separation there? Wouldn't it be understood according to this that their image and likeness is the same? You would think. Except there's something I want you to pay attention to first. And let them rule over the fish of the sea. Hey, they're ruling over the fish of the sea. We don't rule over the fish of the sea. Y'all know that, right? Y'all know that there's animals that they've tried to put in aquariums like a great white shark. They even tried to put one out at sea. They couldn't tame it. They couldn't rule over it. This says you can, and no, ruling over them is not killing them. Okay, that's not what it is. So we rule over the other animals because we capture them as young and we tame them and then we domesticate them, right? That's how we rule over them. Killing them with a gun ain't ruling over them. That's a tyrant, okay? But they were given dominion, rule over the fish of the sea first. Anybody want to guess why, or have you figured out our likeness? Because they are the remake of Genesis 1:1. That is what they are. That is why some of your translations tells them to refill the earth. That's why people get confused, and that's where others have taken out the refill the earth. But the reason that it was put in there is because that's literally what it says. And we have shown this. But because they don't understand Genesis 1:1 and 1:2 and the things that I have showed you, through inspiration of the Ruach, this ain't me, then you can see why they were given their likeness. That's why there was a separation here. These weren't given the breath of lives. Nowhere were they given the breath of lives. You don't read that. And nowhere do you even come close to having this creation anything like Adam's. Because right here it says, and let them. It was Adam, the animals that have already been created, and then Eve. This ain't the same creation, people. The deception has been deep. That's why you really need to just pray on this if you're having trouble with it. If you're arguing against it, if you're saying absolutely not, I do not believe it, then the thing you're bringing in is feelings. I ain't give you no feelings. I've showed you what it says right here. And over the birds of the heavens, and over livestock, and over all the earth, and over all the creeping creatures that creep on the ground. And Elohim created the man in his image. And image of Elohim, he created him, male and female. He created them. He created them, plural, at the same time. And Elohim barak them. And Elohim said to them, be fruitful and increase and fill the earth. See, that's refill in your King James. They took it out because they can't explain the other things. And people kept saying, why does it say refill? When y'all tell me creation really wasn't done till Genesis 1:3. That's a deception. And refill the earth and subdue it and rule over the fish of the sea. Look here again. First, the fish of the sea, their likeness, and over the birds of the heavens, and over all creeping creatures on the earth. And Elohim said, see, I have given you every plant that yields seed, which is on the face of the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it is for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the heavens, and to every creeping creature on the earth, in which there is a living, and see, that's again, living breath is probably what that should be. Every green plant is for food, and it came to be so. Now, isn't that interesting? That all this was done, all this was put back, rule over the fish of the sea, to have all this food, to do all these things. And Elohim saw all that he had made, and see, it was very good. And there came to be evening, there came to be morning, the 6,000th day. Now they go on into Genesis 2, which we'll talk about later, not today. To try to separate this as some way in order to deceive you when you go to Genesis 2:7 and read about Yahuwah giving the breath of lives to Adam. We can get into that a little later too, but here's the part about this that's pretty cool. I'll show you later, probably next week, why they were given this dominion over the fish of the sea first. And the scripture tells you where these people are, because two, I'm also going to tell you, these are the ones, the Genesis 1:26 creation, they're the ones that Cain feared. They're the ones that he worried about killing him for slaying his brother. Why? Because they knew the word. That's why. They knew the word. And that's why they would slay him, because of what he done. That's why he was cursed. That's why none of them slayed him. But that's also where Seth got his wife. I know the book of Jubilees tells you that he got his wife as a sister. That's not true. That would be breaking the word. He didn't do that. Though Adam was kicked, Adam still knew the word. He didn't know anything else to live, because he'd never lived anything else. He'd never violated anything. He'd never been kicked out. So the only way he knew was how to live what he remembered, and he knew nothing else. And that is what he would have taught Seth as well. So next week, I will go into this further. And I pray those of you that have come this far and seen and listened to what I've shared with you, I pray that Yahuwah, through his son Yahusha's name that I ask, because he says, ask anything in my name and ye shall receive. I just ask that he show you the truth if you're seeking the truth. I'm not here to argue. I didn't bring my feelings into none of this, and I'm not ever going to bring my feelings into it. I'm just going to give you what it says. It's not about feelings. It's about him helping us, all of us that's watching this, get a deeper and closer understanding to the things that we read, and some words or verses that in their true form don't make sense with what we've been taught. So I thank you, Abba, for all that you do. For it's in your son Yahusha's name that I pray for everything. Amen.